Another way of looking at UX is design with impact. And when I talk about impact, it's not necessarily talking about environmentally friendly or NGOs and nothing like that. Impact means that you're making products that are useful and helpful for the users. This might sound very idealistic and very impossible, but on the contrary, UX is meant, the process of UX is meant to help you achieve that. We're going to talk a little bit about design process a bit further on the conversation, but I just want to give you a little bit of the insight so that you understand what is it that you're getting into when you do the change. Another very important point for UX design is that it's a design that it's human oriented. And you might ask, well, isn't it everything human oriented? My answer is it should be, but not necessarily. A good example of this is when you're trying to cancel your internet subscription. I can guarantee you that process was not human oriented. That process was meant to drive you crazy, probably. So when we talk about UX, we're going to try to avoid all of these processes and all of these experiences that frustrate the user and will actually make them want to leave, run away from that experience. Lastly, the thing that I also consider very important is when we talk about UX, we talk about function overlooks. UX usually comes attributed with UI, so there's no UX without UI and vice versa. But if there's only a pretty product that has no usability, no function, and it's just a very frustrating experience, then it's not UX. It might be art, it might be a creative experience, but it's not a UX design. Why am I saying this? Because when people talk about UX, they tend to think that they need a specific background. And all of these things that I'm talking about, they basically relate to things that all humans have as a skill, such as communication, empathy, the ability to understand what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. These are not technical skills that you need to have. These are just things that are taken into more consideration in UX design than into normal design. Okay, any questions so far? Anyone? I'm not seeing any faces, so if you're making any gestures or anything, just write on the chat because I have the chat open here, okay?
Hi, I actually have a question. This is Maria. Maybe this is not the right time to answer it, but maybe bear it in mind because I saw you mentioning function overlooks. So I'm wondering, I imagine at some point you built a portfolio of your work. So I'm wondering if you've ever felt tempted to just over prettify things, and how did you deal with that? How did you stop yourself from doing that?
That's a very good question, actually, because you're always tempted to over prettify things. The thing is, when you're using UX design in your portfolio, because that's a process that you will do also in your portfolio, you have to ask the question, is that pretty button or is that pretty arrow useful? Does it have a purpose? This is the first question you need to ask. Of course, at the same time, you also need to ask whether you need to ask that question for absolutely everything. There's some things that they are not meant to have any usability. They're just meant to look pretty. Then it's all right to make that decision to look at pretty. We can actually go through my portfolio if you want at the end of the conversation, so you can take a look. The portfolio is a very specific thing because you're also creating a visual identity for yourself. So in that case, you can increment the visuals. But when we're talking about product, the looks should be always the less thing you're going to add.
I see. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Great. So I talked a little bit about my experience and my background. I had, just to clarify, I had no experience on design whatsoever. No graphic design, absolutely nothing related to psychology, nothing related to web development. I was purely a sales business person. My last role before design was head of sales. And by a coincidence in life, I got related to a design project, got really, really passionate about it and just digging deep into the change. And when I first saw this chart here, I was really surprised to see that 56% of the people that do the change from a background to UX UI design have absolutely no related experience to it. And that's a little bit related to what I said before. UX design, yes, has technical aspects that you need to learn, but it's not a role that requires any type of certification or any type of specific knowledge or years of that knowledge in order to be applied. Of course, you cannot expect to become a senior UX designer in a day. That's not going to happen. But you can certainly get into the market with the basic knowledge around the basic information, the basic methodologies, and the basic tools for UX UI design. So if you're thinking, I'm not really sure, maybe we can go around if you guys want to share a little bit of your backgrounds. Is there anyone already considering a change for UX, like for real, decided to do the change? If anyone wants to jump in.
Yes, I am, definitely.
You are, Maria. Okay, what's your background?
So I've been a technical writer for the past 4 years, and I've been dealing with both user-facing applications and API documentation. And I don't know, maybe I'm a typical technical writer because everybody kind of tends to jump to the API documentation lately because I guess it's just the latest trend. Mm-hmm. But I definitely enjoyed working with the user-facing apps the most. And this year, I took over a project where I had to basically redesign a documentation center, not redesign, but actually create it from scratch, and a documentation center. And I realized that, funnily enough, the part that I enjoyed the most was everything that had any sort of relation with how the users interact with my doc center. And this kind of took over the importance of my information, the information that went there. So I realized, well, okay, this is a sign that maybe I need to look to dig deeper.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's great. You're actually very much related to design, right? I mean, at least you already have an direct access to the user, which is super cool. And I can tell that you already feel the power of UX to the work that you do, right?
Let's hope. I don't know. We'll see.
Perfect. Is there anyone in the call that has absolutely no relation to design that is considering this change? Maybe not. That's right. If you are that person and you're thinking, that's me, great, don't worry. You can do the change. It's possible. Let's go through this process and you can certainly do it. Just as a reference, I did a boot camp to do this change, and we're going to talk a little bit about the boot camp experience in a bit. And with me, there were singers, there were business people, creative people. So it's real that you can come from any field to the UX UI design. All right. Knowing this information, one thing that I need everyone to think about, at least for a second, is the skills that you have when you're coming into a change like this. This is a really useful matrix. Feel free to take a screenshot if you want. That takes into considerations the main skills that you should know when you're doing this change. Does it mean you have to be a senior in all of them? No, probably no designers are seniors in all of these areas. But this is a really good way to visualize things that you already know and things that you need to work on. When I first started working on my matrix, I think I only had intermediate in design thinking, communication, and agile. Of course, I'm going to say I was a bit of a senior in empathy. I want to say that I was a bit of a senior in empathy. I think we all are. But the rest are very technical things that I was either a junior or absolutely no knowledge. And this is not to demotivate you. This is only to make it clear that you have a path ahead of you, and these are things that you need to focus while you're doing the change. So I incentivize you to take a screenshot and work on your matrix when you start the change. Great. The other question, the other thing that I recommend you to think about is why you're doing this change. And there isn't really a right or wrong answer for this question. I've heard people saying because it's a trendy role, because it pays well, because it's creative, because, as Maria just explained to us, because she's working on the background and she sees that design will impact what she's doing on the background. So there isn't really a right answer for this, but it is important that you have an answer for this. When you're talking about career change, you need to convince people, interviewers and employers, that your story and who you are makes sense for the position that you're applying for. And having that reason will help you create that storyline, right? I did put here, let's find out yours, but I see that you're all very quiet. So if anyone wants to share the reason why they're doing this, like Maria did, feel free to jump in at any point. Daniel, I see you're asking about the design process. I'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in a second. Okay. Right. So how do we start the preparation for this change? I did set it up in a 1, 2, 5 steps. Of course, you can do it in the order that you want. These were steps that I did when I started to change, and it worked for me. But if you look on Google, there are more information and other things that you can work on. First thing, and probably the most important thing that you would have to start today and never stop, is start reading. Luckily, UX UI design is one of the fields that produces the biggest amount of content I've seen out there. So if you like podcasts, there are podcasts about it. If you like TED Talks, there are TED Talks about it. I'm personally a big fan of Medium. Some of the publications that I follow are there, based in Medium. UX Planet and UX Collective are on Medium. There's also the Envision blog, which is a really fun and interactive blog with a lot of really nice content. The Nielsen Norman Group is, they are the standard. They define best practices and everything that you should know when you're doing the change for design. Ideal is a company responsible for the creation of the design thinking methodology. So if you actually manage to do their courses, that's really great content that they have there. But if you cannot maybe afford the courses that they also have a really, really nice blog. And also Career Foundry, which is a school. They're a school, but they also have a lot of content available. There's way more than this. These are just the ones that I use as reference on a daily basis. But that's certainly my first recommendation. All of these publications that I'm putting here. I see that Daniel is asking about projects to show. We're going to talk about it. All of these publications, they also once in a while publish design challenges that can serve as use cases for the portfolios. That's one idea, and I'll give you more ideas in a second. So start reading right now. As soon as this call is over, start reading as much as you can. Any questions so far about the publications? Okay, so let's keep going. All right, so learn the basics, the methods, the tools, and the processes. There is a lot of information available online, so you can actually start the process on your own. I have put here the things that you need to know, whether you decide to do a bootcamp or just do this process on your own. These are methodologies and basic things about UX that you have to have an understanding about. It doesn't mean you need to be an expert on it, but you need to be able to understand where they're going to be applied in a design process. The main one is UX principles. And as soon as you start Googling about it, you'll see that there's tons of different UX principles. There's actually a book that talks about 152 UX principles. If you have the time and the energy to go through all of them, good. You don't have to. Just know that the most important principle of UX UI design is user centricity. Everything else that comes around it is to facilitate user centricity, to facilitate user experience. The more you know about the principles, the easier it's going to be to do your work, but it's also a process to understand them all. Now, I know that Danielle talked about the design process, so it's also really important to have a grasp of what design processes mean. Each company has a different way of applying design processes. Each company has different steps for design processes. In general, all companies have a research stage, a design stage, a testing stage, and in most cases, an implementation stage, unless they're giving to another company to implement for them. But research, design, and testing, it's something that it's always a part of your design process. I'm currently working for an agency that has a longer design process. So we do research. We also do have a stage specified for ideation, which is generating possible solutions. Then we have the design, then we have testing, and then we have implementation. The list that you see here under the design processes are some of the techniques used in each of these stages. So I'm not going to go through all of these because each of these specific things have tons of methodologies inside. So I encourage you to take a screenshot or write it down, or maybe use a presentation later on. These are things that you're going to have to know what they're for and how to use them. You might not use all of them when you become a UX UI designer.
Nach Backnang. Nächste Station, Feuersee.
There's someone in the metro.
Ausstieg links.
Hello, everyone. Okay, is everyone listening to me? Okay, great. So you might not use all of these things when you are a UX UI designer in your next role, but you might have to work with other designers that are working in different stages of the process. So you need to understand the lingo and how to operate it. So it's actually easier to give the work to someone else or to receive the work from someone else. I'm going to refer back to my experience. So currently I'm working more as a UI designer. So I receive all the research and analysis from a UX researcher. And then I apply my UI decisions based on that. But I have to understand the type of methodologies he's using to be able to make these decisions. All right. Any questions so far? All right. Eldos, I'm going to publish in the chat a list of the books for beginners for UX UI design. One of the biggest and most important recommendations is The Design of Everyday Things. This is the first book you should read. It's not necessarily related to digital products. It's about design in general, but it goes back to design principles. And I think the understanding of how to produce products is really essential for when you're working as a UX designer as well. Design of Everyday Things. And but I'll send also a list through the chat in a second, right? No questions about the design process. Danielle, you asked about the design process. Do you have any questions here? You can also write on the chat.
I have a question if nobody else has one.
Yeah.
You mentioned being in a boot camp earlier, so I guess you learned about the process there. How different did you feel real life was from what you learned in the boot camp?
That's the question I get the most, and that's actually Maria, do you give me a second? I'm going to go through the tools and then we'll talk about the bootcamp, because I think that's the biggest curiosity everyone has, and we're going to spend some time there. Sure. Great. So before we get to the bootcamp, let me just show you a few of the tools that you need to start learning as soon as possible. The first question also I get around the tools is whether you need to have full proficiency in the Adobe pack. If you're not going to focus in visual design, if that's not where you're looking at, not necessarily. If you are going to focus in visual design, I highly recommend it. You should focus in Illustrator and Photoshop for sure. And if you want, you can also focus on their motion and animation tools. My personal experience with the design tools is that Sketch is by far the best. The only problem of Sketch is that you still cannot do, well, now with the latest update they had, you can work simultaneously with other designers, but it's not as good as the Figma feature. So that is the main difference. Sketch has been the biggest and most important design tool for the longest time, and now Figma is trying to compete with it. So they're releasing all of these collaborative tools and animation tools. They are getting to the same level, and in some cases better level than Sketch. Do you have to learn both? I would say not, because they're very, very similar. They have the same commands and the same lingo, but you need to become proficient in one of them. So choose the one that you feel most comfortable with and go for it. How do you do that? YouTube. If you don't want to pay for a bootcamp, if you don't want to pay for specific courses, YouTube has amazing tutorials They give you entire information A to Z on both Sketch, Figma, and also Adobe XD. Adobe XD is the same, is kind of the same tool. Here you also see InVision. InVision is a prototyping tool, and it's also a great tool to show your design work to clients. It's not a very difficult tool to use. You can basically export your sketch designs to InVision and then just make a connection to create a real use prototype. You can also have, I think you can have up to 3 projects for free. So feel free to explore it. I think it's really important that you know how to operate it. Abstract is a bit of a harder to learn on your own. Abstract is a tool to help you design simultaneously in big projects. So if you're working, let's say, with a website that has 100 pages and there's designers working simultaneously on it, Abstract just helps you make sure that you don't lose any of the design at no point in time. It's a bit harder to test. I think there is a trial version of it, but if you're not working with someone else, then you don't really have the right feel for the tool. But there are certainly a lot of tutorials online, so you can take a look on what people are talking about it, so at least you understand how it functions. Zeppelin is also for teams working with developers. Zeppelin allows you to translate your designs into code. It's very simple. You usually have a Sketch or Figma plugin attached to it, and you can just put your designs straight into Zeppelin. There's nothing very, very hard about it. Here I also added Whimsical and Miro. This is the most well-known features for whiteboarding and brainstorming, information architecture tools. So they're very visual and they help you organize a little bit of the UX part before you arrive to the UI part. Any questions so far? Nope. Okay, so Daniel has a good question here. So attending to time constraints in a daily work, you prefer to go straight to high fidelity prototypes or start with some low fidelity prototypes? This is a great question, Daniel. This goes back again to the process that each company has, but as a rule, I would always start with low fidelity prototypes. And the reason for that is because if you go straight to the high fidelity prototypes at first and you implement it or you present it to the client, that's already a final version, and it's really hard for you to iterate on that. Low fidelity is a fast way to show an idea and change it as well quickly. There's another thing that designers say, that the lowest the fidelity, the least attached you become to the design. And that is very, very true. If you spend a lot of time producing a super high fidelity work, it will be really hard for you to change it once a client or someone else tells you it's not good. So start with the fastest, the quickest, get feedback, test it, and then iterate on that. And as soon as you have a final version for that low fidelity, then you move on to medium and high fidelity prototypes. I'm taking a bit of a curve here, getting the questions and doing the presentation at the same time. If anyone is confused, just stop me, please. Great. So now we're going to talk about the bootcamp, and I think there's a lot of people interested in that. The third step for me is structure your learning. And there's 2 ways of doing it. You can do it on your own. And I think there are enough resources online to do this entire process on your own. From my personal experience, there was nothing in the bootcamp, content-wise, there was nothing on the bootcamp that only the bootcamp had as an information. Everything that they showed us was readily available online. It is true that if you're just looking at this career right now, if it's the first time you're reading or listening about UX, it might be very overwhelming to do it on your own. It might be also very overwhelming to structure the steps, right? So where to start, what next, and so on and so forth. And the bootcamp offers you this entire structure to kind of help you out. Bootcamps in general, if you ask my very, very honest opinion, are overpriced. I think they're very overpriced. And if I might also be very honest with you, I only did it because I got a scholarship. I don't think I would have done it if I had to pay the full price for a boot camp. Now, what are the positive sides of the boot camp for people that cannot do this whole self-taught process on their own, maybe because they don't have the time, or maybe because they are not as organized as it will be ideal? The boot camp, usually good boot camps, not all of them, but good boot camps, they are focused in projects. And that's where, and we go back to Daniel's question, that's where you start getting some material, some use cases to put on your portfolio. To give you an idea, in the bootcamp that I did, we produced 8 projects. 4 of them became A to Z use cases. So use cases that I actually presented on my interviews when I first started doing interviews. And there were 4 projects that I could have worked on them to have the full structure and also presented. I didn't have the time, and I also didn't want to, but you do have at least 8 projects ready to present. One of these projects is with an actual company. So you have also the experience of talking to a company and seeing how the project would work. That for me was by far the best thing of the bootcamp. It is true that is really, really energy consuming, so it's not for everyone. In my class, there were people dropping out in the middle of the process because you're probably working and studying 10 hours a day for 3 months. And that might be too much for some people. If you're keen to do the change and you're already motivated, it's a good way to do it. Of course, you have to weigh in the financial responsibility, right, with the boot camp. Yes, Janita, I'm actually looking at 10 hours. It is 10 hours a day. So the hour to study is from 9 to 6 every day, but you're expected to deliver projects on time. So we would stay at least 2 or 3 hours every day after school, either studying or doing interviews. We're expected to do interviews and testing outside of the class. So on average, 10 hours a day. There were some weeks, especially on the final weeks when we were delivering the project for the real company, that I didn't sleep for a whole night trying to finalize things. So it is really, really intense. Luckily, the bootcamp that I chose was very prepared to support us psychologically too. There was someone there to kind of check on us and see how we were doing. But it was really, really intense. Usually the bootcamp is 9 weeks long. Now I think in COVID they remained with a 9 weeks deal. I've seen, this is the full-time, I'm talking about the full-time, right? The part-time is 6 months, so it's a bit longer. And if you're thinking about doing the full-time bootcamp, there's absolutely no time or energy to do a full-time job, Maria. That's impossible. And I also don't recommend it because there are exactly, there are some people that try to do in my class, there's some people trying to do freelance at the same time, and you're just a zombie if you do that, because you do need to sleep at one point. So it's really, really, really intensive. To replicate this pressure and this intensity on your own without the school structure is really, really hard. So if you don't want this pressure, if you don't want to work 10 hours a day, then you can certainly achieve similar results studying on your own. I said before that most boot camps are focused in projects. You can also do that on your own, and I can also send a list of websites that give you challenges that you can work on. And you can go, the challenge usually asks for a simple solution, but you can actually work through the full project on that solution and have a ready-made case to present it on your portfolio. So it is possible. It's a bit harder to do on your own, but it is, I believe it is very possible. Okay, any more questions about the bootcamp? Anyone? I think this is an important topic for most. Okay. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, independent of the bootcamp, or independent of whether you're going to do a bootcamp or do it on your own, you have to practice every day. So what happened when we finished the bootcamp luckily or unluckily, when I finished the bootcamp, the COVID started 2 days after. So I had the time and the availability to practice every day. But even if COVID is not here and you have a job, I would recommend you doing at least one challenge per day. I added here a list of websites where you can do UX UI challenges. Keep yourself in the game when you decide to do this change. Just keep in mind that is a really, really trendy market. There's a lot of people coming into this market. And if you're not up to speed, if you're not training your eyes, if you're not really understanding UX principles, you're going to be behind. So a good way to do that is UI challenges. There are also a lot of UX challenges. UXL is a good, how do I call this? It's like an exercise, a UX UI design exercise, a bit more interactive, a bit more relaxed than the challenges. I would also recommend you to take designs that you like, let's say Spotify, the Apple website, or iTunes, or whatever it is, whatever design that you feel it's a good design, and just copy it. Put it on Sketch and copy exactly the same way. That's one of the best practices for to train your eyes and to learn UI. There are also redesign exercises that you can find online. You can either do it on your own, find a website that you find it's really, really bad, and just invent a new website. Always try to base your design decisions into some type of research or benchmarking or whatever it is, but it's also a good exercise to practice. I would recommend you, Anissa is asking how many times a week, as many times as possible, Anissa. Of course, you have to balance with real life and full-time jobs, but if you are not doing an exercise and a challenge, make sure you're actually getting a little bit of reading every day on the topic. The trends of UX UI design vary on a really, really fast pace. And it's not necessarily you're going to be applying trends to your work every day, but you need to be up to speed to be able to show it to clients. Sometimes clients come to you with these trends and you need to be able to answer why you're not using that trend or why are you using that trend. So somehow you have to keep up to date with the topic. All right. And finally, I would recommend you to try to find a mentor. This is not super easy. I have to confess, when I first started looking for people that could help me out, there was a lot of people that ignored me. So just make sure that you're determined to find one and ask as many people as possible. The recommendation I have while you're looking for a mentor is to find someone that has a similar background to you. A similar story, professional story that you have, and try to connect on that level. Having a mentor is good for emotional support, is good for book references, is good for challenge proposals. So just have someone there on the journey will make your life very, very easy, or easier than it would if you're doing it alone. I already put myself available for people coming from business backgrounds that want to do the change. Just contact me and let's try to do the best possible. I was really lucky to find someone that helped me build my portfolio, and it was criticizing my work. So if you find someone that can help you do that, that you will certainly help you a lot on the process. Okay. Great. So this is also a question that I get a lot of people coming to the UX UI field. If you search for UX UI job titles, you're going to be buried under a list of 1,000 different job titles. Some of the companies use job titles in very weird ways, especially startups. So they will ask for a UX designer that knows how to code, that knows how to whatever, that knows how to do burpees, that knows anything that you can imagine in the description of that job position, they're going to add in there. So my recommendation before you even decide to do the change is to really read through these job positions, these job postings, and see what these companies are asking for. The rule of thumb is that if you're a UX designer, you're going to be focused on the entire process, A to Z. You're going to do research, you're going to do design, you're going to do testing, you're also going to do a little bit of implementation, but you have to, if you're not going to do implementation, you have to know about implementation. Product designer is a bigger, not a bigger role, but a more strategic role. You're probably talking to the end client more often, and you're doing a little bit of the business head around the product creation. Visual designer is the person probably looking more into the typography, colors, iconography, and all the visual, the aesthetics of the product. And you're asking if it's necessary to know coding? Not at all. Not at all. If you know coding, better. And then you're probably looking at positions that are more startup positions where you do the full process. Just bear in mind that it's really, really difficult for a UX designer to do the entire process of design and then also do the entire coding and implementation of the product in the times the company asks. So even if they ask for coding knowledge on the job position, it's really, really difficult that you're going to apply that knowledge on your day-to-day basis. It's actually a lot of things to know. If you know that, I actually added this title here. If you know that, you're called a UX unicorn, a guy that knows everything or a girl that knows absolutely everything. And that's hard to find, but there are some out there. A UX researcher usually is more focused in the research part. There's a lot of methodologies and techniques around the research. So there's also a lot of companies focusing on that, on these type of positions. And for that, you don't really have to have in-depth knowledge of the UI, of the visuals, but it's important that you understand the basic principles so that you're able to communicate with the UI designer. Content strategist sometimes is also called UX writer. So the person finding the right UX content to the products that you're creating. And there's many, many other titles out there. If you found a title, out there that you don't know what it is, feel free to ask me, and let's see if we can figure it out what they're asking for. So yeah, my suggestion is to read through these positions, see really what they're asking for. And whenever you go into an interview, just make sure you understand that you're actually going to be able to do everything that they're asking for. They usually ask for way more than what you're going to do on your day-to-day life. I can give you an example. I was hired as a UX UI designer, and I'm mostly doing UI work. I jump in for research whenever it's necessary, but my focus is UI, and it's a lot of things. Is already a very heavy load of work. Mm-hmm. Okay, any questions so far about the positions? No, I guess not. Great. I found this quote yesterday, and I think this is really, really important for you to know. We talked a little bit about not having a specific background or a graduation or a certificate or a diploma to get into UX design. Therefore, a design portfolio, I think, is more important than a CV. In my experience, in the interviews I've done, they barely looked at my CV. They looked at my CV to find my website, my portfolio, and then go to the portfolio. The portfolio is what we call your visual identity, right? A portfolio should show your potential, so your skills, what you can do. It should also show your achievements. If you don't have any design achievements, then let's talk about the presentations that you've done. Let's talk about projects that you've been involved in. Let's talk about your previous work experience. It doesn't matter. Show whatever it is that you can do. That's you. That's your visual identity. Show your interest. If you go into my website right now, you see that I have a tab for music. That's a big interest that I have. And I think this is really important so the employer understands really who you are and who they're talking to. Different than the CV, the portfolio is an opportunity to show a little bit more of interactions and just showcase a little bit of your individual and your personality. So you can go all out. A website that I recommend for you guys to find references is called Best Folios. And there are references from all over the world, all type of job profiles, and they're really, really nice. You'll see that there's not a single structure to the portfolio. What I do recommend though is that you make it personal and unique. If you can make it responsive, right now there's a lot of platforms that help you do the website already in a responsive form. If you're going to code it yourself, make sure that it's responsive. Take advantage of your background. Your background is never useless when you're doing a career change. It's part of your story, it's part of who you are, and you're bringing all of this to the table as well. My suggestion is to have from 3 to 5 projects. I know it sounds like a lot of projects, but less than that, it's just not too credible that you can actually go through an entire design process on your own. So try to have at least 3 projects to showcase. Yeah, I'm gonna put my website here. I know you're all gonna go there and give me some traffic. Let's do that. There you go. My website is in the chat. By coincidence, actually, I put a bunch of black portfolios, and my portfolio is also black. They don't have to be black at all, right? You can choose the visual aspects that you want. This is really, really personal. You will see that there's a lot of portfolios that look alike. And I was asked this question before, if copying is a good thing for portfolios. And my honest answer is, if you copy it and make it better and make it personal and unique, it's all right. Of course, don't copy exactly like it is, because that's just not right. But you can use it as reference for sure. One problem that I had when I was first doing my portfolio was finding a font. So what I did was look through as many portfolios as I could, found a font that I felt matched what I wanted to convene, and chose that. Know for a fact that a portfolio is in never-ending process. You should be updating it all the time. It should be an iterative process. If you start looking at portfolios right now, you will see that some people put previous portfolios that they had, so that you can see the process of their design improvements, and this is a really cool thing to do. So just know this is going to be your baby for as long as you are a UX UI designer. Here I also added preferably real world projects. So it's all right if you want to add crazy science fiction things, it's okay. That's also a part of you, but make sure that you have real life applications and real life products into your portfolio. If they are with real life companies, better. But if they're only use cases that you've done in Bootcamp, just make sure that you really have the design process and your storytelling right, so that you can explain it to the employers. That's a good question. So right now in my portfolio, you won't find any of the projects that I've been doing in the agency that I'm currently working at. And this is a real life problem. If you're working for agencies, usually not only for agencies, but there are some clients that will ask for confidentiality, and you cannot showcase these on a portfolio. Some clients will let you do it through a blocked access, so you have to put it behind a password. It's true, it happens, and there's not really a way around it. What you can do is maybe say the branding, not discuss about the company itself, and just explain the design process. But the other way around it is just find other projects to work on and add it in there. As long as you're working as a UX designer, you'll see that you will be thinking about UX. So even if you just write a content piece for Medium, that's something that you can post on your portfolio. It doesn't really necessarily have to be an application. It can also be content around UX UI design. Okay, any questions? And I say that we're almost running out of time, so let's see. What else do I have here? Right, so I'm going to finish it up with the interviews, and I think this is really important, because this was something that caught me by surprise when I first started doing the interviews. UX UI interviews, and I think design interviews, and I also think coding interviews have something like this, but it was not true for sales and businesses, so for me it was a big surprise. They will ask you to walk them through the projects that you have on a portfolio. So my suggestion is, before you go to an interview, study the company that you're going to interview for, find the use case, the project that you have on a portfolio that best fits that product and that company, and just learn it by heart, every single thing in that project. The idea is that you show them your process and show them how you work. They want to see, they don't necessarily want to see how pretty it looks or how well you write. No, they want to see your processes and how you're going to work with your processes in their company. They might have some questions, so be ready for some questions. They might have some criticisms, so be ready for some criticisms. Number one rule for UX UI designers is to learn how to listen to feedback. You need to be ready to learn how to listen to feedback. There's also another thing, now in COVID is a bit harder, but in normal situations, companies will usually do a whiteboard challenge. And that is, they will give you a challenge that you've never heard before, and you have to walk them through that solution in a whiteboard in front of them. My suggestion is that there's no right or wrong answer, right or wrong solution when you're doing this challenge like that. My suggestion is that every single thing that you put on the board, you talk about it. So here I'm putting a square because I think this square looks pretty. Now here I'm gonna make an arrow because I think this arrow directs the user to some place. The idea of the whiteboard challenge, again, is to see how you think through a challenge, how you're going to manage to solve a problem when the problem arrives to you. Right. And then there's also some companies that do home challenges, which means they're going to send you a challenge per email. And most of these challenges have a very short briefing. They will give you a problem and nothing else. And you're going to have to figure out how to present it and what exactly they want. In my experience, there's also no right or wrong here. They want to see how you're going to manage that problem, how you're going to present it. They're going to check how your presentation skills are, your storytelling skills are. So be really, really ready. In these challenges, there's a lot of feedback coming. There's a lot of criticism coming. So make sure that you're ready to present it. Okay. All right, so I think this is the main content I have. This is a bit of the recap, and I'm going to leave you my contact here if you want to reach out. And on LinkedIn, my website, feel free to reach out. As I said, if you need some help, some mentoring, or you have some questions about bootcamps and so on, I'll be here. Let me go through the questions in the chat quickly before we finish to see if there's anything else that I can help you with, and then I'll open for further questions. So Daniel, I see that you have a lot of questions. So let's show where we go. There we go. Doing design tests for the client before the interview. Yeah, it is true that when companies send you home challenges, they probably are going to use your designs and your solutions on their own projects. That hasn't happened to me. So the home challenges that I've done were usually about eBay or some generic company. This is the point where you can also be very honest and open with them and ask what they're going to use it for. If you don't have a problem that they use your solution, then that's all right. But if you do have a problem, then you can always ask them to send you a different challenge. Just remember that whenever, and I think this applies for any role, not only for UX UI design, when you're looking for a job, this is an exchange, right? It's not that they're just evaluating you. You also have to evaluate them. Companies that are going to use your work for free might not be the company that you want to work for. Yeah, I think this is it. I don't know if I missed anything else. Boji, I think I'm saying it right, or Bogi. Online courses, yes. Career Foundry is a great website with a lot of online courses. Interaction Foundation is a great website with a lot of courses. Interaction Foundation has an annual fee. I think it's 150 euros per year, and you have access to all of their content. They're really, really good. There's some outdated things, especially when it comes to mobile design, but the latest courses that they're coming out are really amazing. I recommend you to go to YouTube channels, find UX YouTube channels. There's tons of information on YouTube. There's a lot of TED Talks. go also through the big tech companies that you like, such as Spotify. Spotify has a website called spotify.design, where they showcase all of their work and all of their processes. Not only it's a beautiful website, but you can actually see how the UX design work is inside of the company. So it's a really fun way of getting content. There's a lot of, Janita is talking a lot about Coursera courses. Yes, there are Coursera courses. I haven't done any of the Coursera courses, but I've heard there's some really good ones. And yeah, I think these are the ones that come to mind right now. Daniel, that's a work in progress. I think the more people that join the field, the better to help them change their minds. I think nowadays it's actually easier to explain the role of UX for companies because they're seeing on their profits and then on their revenues. The better the product, the more useful the product, the happier the customer is going to be, more the company is going to sell. So it's a slow process, but I think it's already changing. From the moment that I joined the field, my mentor has been in the field for the past 10 years, and he said it has already changed a lot. So if you're joining the field right now, I think it's going to be way easier. I think this is it.
I have another question.
Please, yes. I'm going to check so I can see your faces if there are any faces.
The $1 million question, and
Yes.
Please feel free to not answer it. How long did it take from graduating the bootcamp until you landed the first job?
For me, it took exactly a month. I know this is not normal, but I also let you know that I was willing to be a trainee. And I think if you're willing to be a trainee and an intern, then I think the process is way faster. Right now, I am already a full-time designer. I went through a 6 months trainee job, and then they changed me to the contract. But I do have a lot of colleagues that did the course with me that took up to 6 months to find a job. Some of them haven't found a job yet. So it really depends. Depends on your expectations and depends on your availability.
Got it. Thanks.
There's more questions coming in. Yeah, I mean, I just ran through a lot of stuff. I'm sorry if I spoke too fast. But as I said, I'm super available to help out. If you have more questions, if there are things that I didn't go through here that you want to know. For the person that asked me for the list of books, feel free to drop me an email. I can send you some of the references that I've been using, also websites and just tutorials as well. So just let me know how I can help. I can guarantee you that if you really like user experience, or if you like considering the user, this is a great change you're going to do. I have 10 years experience in sales, and I haven't had any more joy in my life. I don't want to go back to sales at all. Janita is asking about salary range. Okay, salary range, I've seen so far, Janita, that it changes drastically across different countries. In Spain, I'm currently in Spain, is not that promising. So a junior position will give you between 18 and 24K, depending on the company. A senior position can go up to 45K maximum. But if you're working in Germany, then you can expect double that range. So it really depends what country we're talking about, for sure. Yes, let me share my email here. Yeah, see, Daniel was saying Switzerland over 130K. Let's go to Switzerland, everyone. Okay, so here's my email. Feel free to drop me as well a LinkedIn message. Find me there. Yes, and if you have questions around design thinking methodologies and more specific things about the design process, there's another video about the design introduction to UX UI that we did here in Planet Venus, available on their YouTube. So feel free to check it out there. And let's see if we're going to plan another talk soon, and then we can get in depth into other content that you guys, if you have any questions. I think that's it, right? Yeah, I think we're done, Deborah.
I think it's done. We don't have more questions.
Let's see. Now there's one coming in. Is there a website where you can share designs and get feedback? There was one. I cannot think of it now. I know that in Interaction Foundation, there is a section where you can put your website, your portfolio, and people will criticize there. Another suggestion that I have is to just send across different contacts on LinkedIn. You can send it to me, and I'm happy to give you feedback. Also, if you have any feedback from my website, feel free to send it over. Reddit is a good one, Maria. Yes. Yeah, if you do find a mentor, that will certainly be the best way of getting feedback, because it's also a person that knows your background, that knows you, and then the feedback will be related to that. If it's just a technical feedback, then feel free to let me know and I can help out. I think we're good. Thanks, everyone. I'm very surprised that there's so many people. I'm really, really happy that everyone joined, and I hope I could help you in this process. And yeah, I wish you all luck. If you're already undergoing this change, I wish you lots and lots of luck, and see you around in the UX UI talks.
Yeah, and again, Amanda, I want to tell you it was a pleasure to have you in Planet Venus. I hope we're gonna do much more now in this 2021. And again, thank you very much. Hope to talk to you very soon. Thank you, everybody who are here. And tomorrow we have another event. Then check our platform and see you, I hope, everybody tomorrow.
Yep. Bye-bye, everyone. Stay safe.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.
Ciao. I see that Tom asked. Tom, send me per email. I'll do it. I'll check it out. Ciao.
I don't close before Tom is asking.
He's asking for me to take a look at his portfolio. Yeah, just send it out, Tom. And I'll do it.
Okay, perfect. Then Tom is done. Yeah.
I think we're good.